Okay, if people joined, are people in the live stream? Well, let me open the chat. Oh my god, wait, there's already hundreds of people watching. Hello, everybody. Hello. How are you, people? How are you all doing? Are you all feeling good this weekend? Hello, everybody in the chat. Hello, everybody. I'm gonna say hi to everybody in just 1 second. Let me just tell you what we're gonna do today in the video. Hey Ella, hey Splat King, hey Joshua, hey Yoshi Gaming, hey Person, hey Agent Boy, hey Buena, hey UD Guy. Okay. Okay, let's go up first of all. Hey Zelda, hey, wait, the chat is too fast. Hold on. Hey Andy, whoa, it's way too fast. Hey Rock Rules, hey Link, hey oh my god, hey Mafia, hey Travis, hey Angel Boy, hey Alexander, hey Estin, hey Buena, hey Immortal Origins, hey Pow Pow, hey Ronan, hey Sashimi, hey Omar, hey Smash, hey Jelly Juice. I appreciate everybody who tuned in. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining in this fine weekend. Wait, I can just see who participant. Okay, I have the names of everybody. Hey Dola, hey Agent Boy, hey Alan Grass, hey Alejandro, hey Alpha, hey Andy Zhao. Everybody who writes in the chat, I can see him in the participant window in YouTube, so that's kinda cool. Hey Batik, hey blah blah. Hey Buena, hey Kadu, hey Katmara, hey Katamingo, hey Christoph, hey Chocotaco, hey Drew Butler, hey Eastern, hey Echo, hey Ella, hey Flash, I'm at age right now. Hey Hoodie Guy again, hey Ian, hey it's Kakarot, hey Jack Owo, hey Jelly Juice again, hey Jennifer Cashman, hey Link of Time, hey Lisa Browning, hey Louis. Wow, how did I never use this in the past? I can just read from the participant. Then the chat is kinda like... Okay, we're at M. Hey Max, hey Mango, hey Marlon, hey Meme Lord, hey Meti. Meti's in the chat too. Hey Microgroff, hey Misty Dang, hey Mossy, hey Nature Walker, hey Omar, hey Otto Marjo. So many names, so many names. Hey Piku, hey Pilvar. Hey Ronan Plays, hey Sam, hey Sammy, hey Sashimi Lord, hello. Hey Sub Titan, hi Stacy Webb, hey The Great Papyrus, hey Tobias. Why is this so much fun, just reading out people's names, jeez. Hey White Diamond, hey Wolf Boy Gaming, hey Wolf Vlogs, hey Woomy TV, hey Yandey, hey Zelda Fun, hey Zelda Boy 49, glad you made it. Hey XJ, hey Linkel. And hey team and hello question mark. Okay, now that we're ready. Okay, I just remember I didn't cook like speed elixir. Okay, it's okay, we'll manage. So, thanks to one of my viewers, which I credited in the video I posted a few hours ago. Thorny Fox was his name, if I remember correctly. Hey Shannon! It's Corona time, oh my god, that's bad. So, if you do the infinite jump glitch, and then you go up the sky, up like high enough, then you can basically avoid the death zone in the Divine Beast. In this case, it's Ruta. You can use it in Meadow, you can use it in Boris, you can use it on Rodania as well. And I saw that a lot of people already watched my video from a few hours ago, but I went all the way to the end of Hyrule's continent. You see those fake mountains? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we passed them. But in this video, we're gonna go somewhere else. First of all, we're gonna go to the Yiga Hall, and this time we're gonna reach the bottom of it, like the real bottom of it. And then afterwards, we're gonna continue even more west to those mountains and reach the end of the west border. I mean the edge of the west continent of Hyrule. Okay, so we reached the north, now we'll go west. And I may possibly do a video where I go east, or maybe south, to the endless oceans. Or maybe I should do a video where I go to this mountain. Like that island. That should be a fun video. Like those mountains. Oh man, you can still see the flames inside. Inside Ruta. So as you might have known already, wow, I really can't keep up with the chat. It's really going really quick. I see people writing in Hebrew. Oh my god. Okay, so basically, when you're inside Divine Beasts, you have the Hyrule you see outside is basically like fake Hyrule. It's like all the textures that's loaded, but it's like fake textures. So if I go down now, I'm basically gonna go through the floor. So you can't stand on anything, but you can basically explore everywhere. Oh my god. Wait. Yiga is over there, so let's just go in a straight line. Okay, we're almost out. We're almost leaving the Zora area. I wanted to cook some food, like you know, speed elixir. Unfortunately, wait, hold on. Why is my chat on a different Wi-Fi? Okay, I fixed it. Okay. So, let me go in again. Okay. So I wanted to cook a speed elixir, but as you can see, it's not my master save file on the Switch. It's like normal mode save file. I barely have anything. I only have like Revali's Gale and barely any material, so we'll have to run slow. Wait, do I have any? No, I don't have any custom for speed. Dang it. This may take a while, but hey, I have the chat to entertain me this time. So hopefully it's gonna go well. Hey the great Papyrus, glad you joined in. Hey, didn't I say hi to you earlier? Hey Andy Zora, hey Brenna again. Hey unofficial Daz thing. Hey Otto. Hey guys, remember to like this stream. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for coming. Hey Alisa, glad you made it. Zelda boy, my boy. Glad you made it too. Hey Alan Parsley. Hey Gacha Points. Hey Agent Boy. Hey Isabella Van Ginkel. Glad you made it. I will see your comments on my videos. In my videos. So thanks a lot Isabella. Hey Alec the Mill. Hey Joseph. Hey Austin. Hey Logan. Am I going in the straight line? Yeah, I am. Oh, hey Mossy, thank you so much for the €2 donation. I really appreciate it. Your videos are great. Thank you so much, Mossy24, for the €2 donation. I really appreciate it. Hey Rock Rules, I love you too. Thank you so much for writing in Hebrew. Hey, a person. I'm originally from Israel, so if you didn't know that. Although all my fans know I'm from here, so come on. I do get to travel a lot, so yeah. Sometimes when I record and upload a video, I'm in a different country because I travel around or something. Hey Matt Butcher, thank you so much for the almost $3 Canadian dollars. I really appreciate it. Hey Maddie, how you doing, man? It's been a while, huh? Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen you, Matt Boucher. I remember you've been on Discord too. I really appreciate you being a fan for such a long while now. Thank you so much, Matt Boucher. Thank you so much. And I've been doing great, thanks for asking. I hope you have a great weekend. Hey Z-Rector GD, thank you for becoming a hero. Everybody who subscribes becomes a hero. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Come on, heroes! Don't you want the big giveaway that I'll be doing at 200k? Come on. We're so close. We're so close. I love you too, Mark Galvani. Hey Asia, hey Link of Time. Wait, hold on. I gotta take my shirt off, like my hoodie. I'm so hot right now. Talking to everybody in the chat makes me excited or something. I don't know. Oh my god, I'm so hot in here. Wait, hold on. Let me put my headphones. Hey, Divide Lebaski. Thank you so much for subbing. I really appreciate it. Hey, Aiden. Glad you made it. Hello, Andy. Hey, Smash Broda. Thanks for joining. Hey, Otto Marjo. Link of Time. Travis Round, thank you. Hey, Paradox. You just became a hero. Thank you so much for subscribing. Yeah, I already did a face reveal. I hope that one time I'll get to live stream during the day. Maybe next giveaway I'll try doing it during daylight, so I'll have good lighting. Hey Joshua Jackass, glad you made it. Like not Jackass, I mean Jackass. Hey Arsalan Adventure Time, thank you for becoming a hero. I really appreciate it. Agent Boy is a hero, he subscribed. Thank you so much. Hey Aaron25746, I appreciate you joining in. Hey Leo Bess. Hey hey Beepy Deep. Hey Lily the Dragon. Hello Amaro. Yeah, so technically I'm still in Varuda. As you can see, my marker is here. Like if I go like lock on myself, it shows I'm still in Ruta. It does show my camera angle though, but I think we're around here. Are we? Yeah, kinda around. Yeah. So, Zelda Boy 49, you just unsubscribe and subscribe so you can be on the live stream banner. Come on. Hey Loic Mater Defu. I'm probably butchering everybody's nicknames. Jeez. So I wanted to start doing this from Vamedo, but unfortunately on this save file I already beat Vamedo, so I can't do it again. Hey Smugmax Clawfield, thanks for subscribing. And I also wanted to do it actually from Naboris, but doing the whole Yiga Clan hideout and then shooting Naboris with the princess, it's gonna take like an hour, so I was like, why not just do it here from Ruta and walk all the way with no freaking speed elixir, cause I'm crazy. Hey Leo Best, thank you so much for subscribing. Hey Echo, hello to friends. And thanks QBs for subscribing as well. Hey Paradox, well I already did the video for Infinite Jump Glitch. It's also known as the moon jump glitch, if I'm correct. It's very easy to do it. Hey Starfire, thanks for subscribing. Basically you need to go to the horse minigame, the archery minigame, and before the time ran out, you need to jump on another wild horse, and when you're on it and the time runs out, you respawn at the beginning of the minigame, then you cancel it and just fast travel anywhere else in the world, and that's it, you can start infinite jumping anywhere. Hey Greek hero Yi, glad you made it. And glad you subscribed to my channel. Thank you so much. Okay, as you can see, you know, let's lose altitude a little bit. I mean, come on. Let's see Hyrule from here. Wait, I'm not gonna die, right? No, I'm good, I'm good. I shouldn't die. I shouldn't be dying, no. Okay, if I die, we just wasted 15 minutes of walking. Okay, let's hope I won't die. Please, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me, game. I'm not that glitched, come on. See, this game is perfectly normal. We're just in Hyrule. Woo! No, we're not. We're in fake Hyrule, basically. Oh, now we need to go like all the way up. We'll need to go all the way up. Okay, let's go up again. Dun, 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 dun. So I am recording this live stream. I mean, this live stream will be available on YouTube afterwards anyway. But I'm also recording this on my computer at a higher quality. So maybe fun things will happen. I will cut it and make a very short video out of it for funsies as a highlight. We'll see how it goes. Come on, I see the trees. I see the fake trees. Take me above the ground for a second. Hi NTT, glad you made it. Okay. Look, it seems like regular Hyrule, but we can't step on anything. Plum 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 plum. Wait, I am speaking English. Wait, does it sound like I'm speaking another language? If it does, tell me which language. Who says Hyrule is empty? Because he was right, Hyrule is empty. There's nothing in Hyrule. At least not in fake Hyrule. Hey Jean Calderon, thanks for subscribing, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not French, although many people think I'm French. Because my English accent, I don't know, I guess it sounds kind of French. Hey Mike Rushton, glad you made it to the live stream, you verified YouTuber. Yeah, actually, I am on the way to the west unexplorable Hyrule. I'm actually gonna stop by right in front of me in the Yiga pit, in the bottomless pit. I know we're gonna get to the bottom and we can see it, but apparently there is a way using the apparatus glitch to actually reach the bottom and stand there in the real Hyrule. So I will do that in a different video. In this video we're just hanging out in fake Hyrule basically. Well, the Master Sword has became a hero. Thank you so much, Master Sword. Hey Shiba Wave, no I'm not German. Sorry to disappoint. Hey Link65, glad you tuning in to my live stream after a while. Hey Rock Rules, hey, thanks for speaking Hebrew again. Legends OP, my good friend, thank you for joining. You should all check out Legends OP channel. He plays Dragon Ball Z and he does crazy videos. Hey Tyler Peterson. Hey Ella. Ella is a hero. She is. Luna has became a hero. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hey Amber. Glad you made it. Hey Brenna again. Hey Federico. Hey Andy. Wait, before I pass out, let me take a sip of my water. My thumb hurts. I've been pressing the X button in the past 12 hours. I think more than like 10,000 times, really. I'm being honest. Yeah, I never got cramps from playing video games. Hey, Phony Fox, glad you made it to the live stream. I just finally see your name in the chat. No, my X button is not wobbly. No. Hey Valkyr, thank you so much for subscribing. I really appreciate it. Hey Trampucci, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Hey Irfan Kamal, hello to you as well. Hey Crazy Montoya. Hey Igor Zaborov, thank you so much for subscribing. And thank you Tref X7 HD. Wait, is that a reference to Mega Man X7? Okay, let's watch the sunrise a little bit. You can still see the flame in Ruta. You know what's nice in fake Hyrule? It's always a sunny weather. It's never cloudy. It's never rainy. It's always clear weather, which is nice. Hey Evie Potato, thank you for joining in. Wait, why did I talk? Because it seems like it's actually cloudy. Oh my god, it is cloudy. Wait, is it cloudy or is it just the cloudy sunrise? What's going on? It's not a sunset, it's sunrise. Wait, did I say sunset? Okay, if I did say sunset, I meant sunrise, dude. Yeah, I'll finish this live stream by falling to the bottom of the world again. Although I did in the end of the last video. But we can do it again. Am I going to the... Wait, hold on. Okay, the Yiga is over there. Let me... Okay. I know this is long, but it's actually fun exploring in midair. Link can fly like the wind. How much time is left? Okay, let's see. We'll be walking for 24 minutes. Actually 20 minutes. So, let's see. Here, I'll try doing more running. Actually, kinda faster. Two decades later. Come on. I can feel the Yiga pit. I'm running from Ruta. I'm running from my responsibilities as a hero in Hyrule. I wish I can speed this up. unfortunately I don't have free stamina wheels, and I didn't have a dragon horn to cook speed elixir for half an hour. Hey Sammy, I'm not really a fan of speedrunning. Like, I like watching it, of course, and I appreciate the skills of players, but I don't like to play games really like... I like to play them fast, but not in a way like speedrunners do. Like, oh my god, resetting because one small error, a game you've been playing for 2 hours, oh my god. That's kinda exhausting. Hey Crate Crusher, thanks for joining. Okay, where are we? We're pretty close. I'm guessing we'll reach the Yiga in like less than 5 minutes. No, 6 minutes. Let's see if I'm right. Well, if I whistle run... You can really whistle run in... Wait, is it... Where am I running? Oh my god, you can whistle run. You can whistle run while jumping. That's awesome. How did I not try this before? That's awesome. Thanks for the tip. It does seem faster, yeah, because I'm actually jumping while whistling. Wow, this is actually faster. Wow, this is way faster. Oh my god. Wow, my fingers need to rest 1 second. Yeah, look, you can actually see I'm running, I think. Wait, that's walking. Wait, I think it's running, I'm not sure. Okay, it does seem like I do go faster by the camera, from what I can tell, so... That is actually faster, I think. Hey Fedotapo, thank you so much for the €2 donation, I really appreciate it. Where are you from? By the way, I love your videos. Oh, thank you so much. I'm originally from Israel, if you didn't recognize my accent. Thanks for tuning in, Fedtapo. I hope I said your name right. Agent Boy says, a normal day for Meti's subscribers. Where's Prologue 3rd? Oh my god. Prologue 3rd is coming in April. In the beginning of April, hopefully. Okay, we're almost at the Yiga Hall. I can almost see it. I may try playing Animal Crossing on the Switch. I never really played Animal Crossing. I will give it a try on the Switch. To be honest, I still don't know what's the point in Animal Crossing. You build a village and you can acquire thousands of items and customize the island and the town and stuff. Hey Ave, thank you so much for subscribing. Yeah, I'll give it a shot on the Switch. Come on, we're almost there. Hey Brenna C, I noticed you. Thanks for joining. Hey, it's Eli Lameo. Thanks for joining as well. The Yiga hole is over there. Hey, Geo Lindrag. Oh wow, thank you for the 20 MX dollars? What's MX dollars? I'm not sure, but thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate it. Would be awesome that out of one area was in Breath of the Wild too. I know, that would be really awesome. Okay, so to be honest, again, thank you so much for the donation, Geo Lindrag. I really appreciate it. So I've actually had this silly idea like a day ago. Hey, Mr. Bacon, thanks for subscribing. Of making an online petition to Nintendo and getting tons of you, my fans, to sign it for Nintendo to release a patch to make the unexplorable Hyrule, like, you know, materialize and physical, so you can climb and just shield surf in that empty area. What do you think? Maybe you'll get a lot of signatures in the petition that Nintendo will actually consider doing it. That would be silly. Okay, the Yiga Clan. Okay, what the heck? It's not even loaded. Hey ZK, thanks for joining, for subscribing. I mean. Okay, if Breath of the Wild had multiplayer, I would be seriously playing this non-stop with all of you fans. Just co-op Link and Zelda. Okay, so the Yiga, the Yiga hall is unloaded in the fake Hyrule. Wait, the whole Yiga clan is... The whole Yiga idol doesn't exist here. Okay. Are you ready? Let's go down! What? How is it snowy here? What's going on? What is this place? Oh, it's not snow, it's actually rock. What's beneath it? There's water. Oh my god. This is too crazy. I'm going lower and low. Okay, that's the most bottom area, basically. Oh, here it is from the bottom. That was a really cool drop, I must say. Okay. So now that we exited the Yiga, oh, we can actually see it from the outside. Hey, Link65 again. Master Kogha looks down, yeah. That was a really wild drop. That was awesome. Okay, so now we gotta go back up again. Desert is pretty empty. You can still see Vamero. That's kind of cool. Where's Master Kogha's skeleton? That's a good question. Hey Random Gamer NX, thanks for joining. Hey Molly Eggington, thank you for subscribing. Wait, hold on, am I in the right? Yeah. Okay, so I don't have it discovered, but we're here. We're gonna go past Agat Mountain and go west as much as possible to explore the unexplorable Hyrule. That was a really cool drop at the Yiga. Whoa. Hold on, my fingers are like... My fingers need to breathe 1 second. Ridiculous. Come on. Okay. Come on, whistle, Link, whistle. Where's the link? Well, at least we have some music in the background. My fingers need to breathe. I'm like holding the left joystick with my left finger, using my left thumb for the down pad, down on the D-pad. My right thumb holding the B button, and my right finger pressing the X button, like mashing it. Wait, I think I'm stuck in running mode. Am I? No, I wasn't. Oh wow. This is exhausting. Okay, let's now whistle for a while. Okay, we can finally have some view at least. Hey FST TV, thanks for joining. Oh wow, like nothing is loaded here. Okay, that's Agat Mountain. We're gonna bypass it. Am I looking west? Yes, I am. Hey Fedetapo, thank you so much again for the €1 donation. I really appreciate it. Ganon be like, where's Link? Why is he not coming to fight me? So if you shoot, my fingers are coming home. If you shoot arrows, they like don't shoot. If you throw weapons, that's it. Pretty much despawned. Okay, this shield is annoying. Do I have any other clothes to wear? I'm sick of this outfit. I have Majora's Mask. I have this. I have this. I guess. Okay, why not? Who have the cooler bow? Okay, here's Agat Mountain. We're gonna bypass it. By the time we cross the border, it should be morning again. I think. I hope. Absolutely nobody look up and sees the Link flying in the air. Hey K Sanchez, glad you made it to the live stream. Hello 6868. Okay, we're passing Agat Mountain. Oh, this is so beautiful. It's a long way to the west. Hey Melinda Atchinson, thanks for joining. Hey Phoenix Crossbow. Hello Crazy Montoya. All your comments in the chat are hilarious, I must say. Link is escaping for... Oh my god. That's ridiculous. Hey Federico, glitch for infinite heart and stamina? I should have done it earlier, but it's too late. Okay, so we're really passing the canyon after Agat Mountain. This is really cool. Whoa, this is beautiful. Goodbye, Hyrule. It was nice playing there, but I must venture to new places. Goodbye, Zelda. Goodbye, responsibilities. Oh, it's sunset. Now we're gonna have. Okay, now let me drink some water, geez. Now we're gonna have about 7 minutes. Hey, Team Crouch, thank you so much for the €2 donation. I really appreciate it. Why didn't you attach a message? Okay, so we're gonna have like 7 minutes or less of like nighttime, so we probably won't see much. Okay, I drank water. Now let's venture. Gotta drink water. Okay, Link may be hungry. What can we eat? Eat anyway. Let's get more stamina for fun. Let's even eat more. Anything else? Can I use this? No. Okay. Zelda is waiting for me in Hyrule somewhere. Wait, what if I drop item? Will they despawn too? What? Why not? He's not holding anything, but he's still holding stuff. What's going on? I'm holding stuff, but I'm not holding anything. This is weird. What if I can't drop it? What if I drop a weapon? It despawned completely. Okay, let's go down the canyon. Hey Armin, thanks for subscribing. And then we'll go up by sunrise, so we can see the view again. Is this water? No, it's nothing. It's just an empty canyon. Wait, what's beneath it though? Water, of course. And then more stuff. Hey Rafael, thank you for subscribing as well. Hey Flylo ZZZ, happy you subscribed. You too, AWM Gessner, thanks for subscribing. Link is that's hilarious. Yoshi's tax evasion says Link is evading these taxes. That's hilarious. Just another night in Hyrule. Link's tax evasion. Hey NG, don't worry, I'll make more videos. By the way, I've been uploading videos daily this month because March is Zelda's month. Because, you know, Zelda Breath of the Wild released in March 2017. So, because this is Zelda month. Well, every year I upload daily in Zelda month. Come on. Wait, am I still in the right? Yeah, I'm heading west. Wait, still west? Well, every month is Zelda month, basically. Hey Melinda Hutchinson, I hope I said your name correctly twice. Oh my god, there's a Medit free in the chat. There's an imposter. Whoa. Hey Joshua Dang, thank you for subscribing as well. So many virus memes, jeez. Well, there's no way for me to die here really, and like I can't use bombs, they just despawn. Hey William Ensun, you awesome too, thank you for tuning in. Hey Forward Gang, happy you're a big subscriber. Link is popping out bombs. Oh, finally we're above ground. Why, I really wish we could shield surf here. That would be so awesome. Oh my god, we're using the bike. Oh my god, that would be so epic. That would be like an endless DLC patch. Just exploring this empty space. What do you mean how long am I going? Until we reach the edge. What do you think? I'm gonna give up? Okay, it's about to be sunrise. Hey Angie, happy you love my videos. Love you too, Forret. You're right, there is no edge in Zelda, but I guess the terrain has an edge. Here, we'll be able to see during the day now the end of the desert. Oh, we can already see it. No, Korean doesn't really work. I mean, if you were in Ruta, it will work. Is there water here? Wait, you can see my shadow. The shadow is real. Well, let's see. I guess it will take another day and a half. Okay, I think that by next sunrise, which is 24 minutes from now, we'll reach the edge of the west area, I think. I hope. Let's see. Oh my god, there's 222 viewers right now. I wish it was 333 viewers. That would be more feeding. Hey Elliot, thanks for subscribing and becoming a hero. Is this Hyrule too? Okay, you can see Hyrule is like not loading over there. Okay, that's the edge of the desert. Is it water over there? Is this the most west? It is. We can still see Hebra Mountain. Hebra Mountain. Yeah, I really wish the sequel will have some extended areas. Like that would be really cool. Like to kind of expand on the current Hyrule a little bit at least. I mean, really, just making a patch. Ooh, there's a canyon here. That's awesome. Just creating a patch to make all this terrain like physical and disabling the invisible walls. Like seriously, it's very doable, I believe. Okay, there seems to be a very huge cliff. Wow. A very huge cliff over there. We're almost making it. Link travels to the sequel. Wait, can we see the desert better? Wait, hold on. It's gonna. I think it should be get a little brighter. Here, it's already getting brighter. Yeah, the end of the desert is basically an ocean, connected to the ocean. It's a lake that's connected to the ocean. Come on, run. We're going to the edge of the continent to the west. Wow, this cliff is really cool. This cliff is super cool. I think that's the is this the last mountain? Oh my god, there's another one after it. Oh my god. Wait, am I going just west? No. Okay, now I'm going west. Hey Andrew, thank you for subscribing. New Hyrule is low-key beautiful, I agree. The grass is not, nothing is real. You go through everything here. That kind of sucks. Hey Spacey Gaby. Am I still west? Okay. Babe. Oh, that canyon is huge, that cliff. It's just somehow they actually made it like this. Like you could well like never see this basically in the game. But it's still not, still has a wall and it looks like coherent. All the terrain here. Really awesome. I'm heading west now. Oh my god, there's more mountains. Jeez. Okay. Let me go as high as I can to see the end, and we may possibly forget about the edge, because that's like another day walk of the jumping, and we'll just drop down all the way until we leave the globe or something. Wow, it's another huge cliff. Oh my god, this is so far. Oh, now we can really see the end of the desert. Why did they add all this? The new Matthew will be here. That's hilarious. Hey music lover, you become a hero by subscribing. It's that easy. It's up to you. Yeah, the whistle run is very exhausting. I don't know if it's that useful. Kinda looks like it is, I'm not sure. I gotta do some testing. Hey Brenna, happy I warmed your heart by saying your name. Glad you're tuning in. This game is endless. Wow, seems like I barely advanced. Okay, I think that's actually the last mountain over there in front of us. Like the last one. Did you ever think we'll reach here in Zelda Breath of the Wild? Like seriously. Neo Geo became a hero. I'm grabbing angles for the thumbnail, possibly. What's this? Nothing. Okay, so I think, I don't know, should I go there? There's not much point. I don't think there's much point, really. As long as we can see the edge, I'm pretty satisfied, to be honest. I just go up a little bit to see what's over there, and then we just drop all the way down. This place is so vast. Okay, so that's the end of the southwest. That's the end of the west. Is this water? No, it's ground. I know, Hyrule is enormous, really. Like, this is basically the size of Hyrule, kind of. I guess over there is the last place that I haven't seen. Okay, so do you want me to keep going up? Keep going to the edge? The pointless edge? What's that? Or do you want me to go all the way down? Tell me which one to go in the chat. Up, straight, or down? Up, straight, or down? Write in the chat. Up, straight, or down, hype? Up, straight, or down? Up, straight, or down? Up, straight, or down? Come on, spam the chat with up, straight, or down? Up, straight, or down? U for up, straight, S for straight, and D for down. Come on. USD basically. USD. That's something else. Okay, everybody's saying down. People saying done too. DS, DS. Wait, I see a lot of D's. Wait, some are S. Wait, S is wait, what's S? Oh, straight. I said forward. Never mind. S or F. It's the same. Okay, a lot of people are starting to say up. Like, are you sure you want me to go up? There's not much going up. Please do up. Okay, I see a lot of D's, lots of F's, lots of S's. But S is straight, okay. F is forward. Well, okay, you want me to go straight or forward? Okay, I think everybody wants me to go down. I think so. Wait, I see a lot of up again. Come on. Up or down? Come on, chat, decide. Up or down? Okay, I think it's between up or down. Oh, wow. Now I can't keep up with the chat. I love how the chat responds to, like, my request of spamming the chat. I love you for spamming the chat, really. I start to see a lot of Z's too. Okay, I think we're gonna go down. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready to go down? Let's take one last view before we go down. And here we go! Well, let me put bomb. Down, down, down. We are going down. Oh, we can see the other one. Then there's water. Let's see if we can do the thing. Oh, it's so colorful. What the crap? What is this? What is this? What's going on? What the crap is this? Look how endless this game is. It just continues on and on and on. Oh, we can kind of see Hyrule. Here's the middle. Okay. There's nothing else. Where am I? I am in the emptiness of the void of the flange of Hyrule. Let's see. How long can we fall though? It's like Link looks like he's like preparing for a Hadouken. Like Hadouken, Hadouken. I think this fall is endless basically. Maybe after hours of falling the game may crash, but I mean I can already see like some slowdowns. Oh wow, it looks like we kinda, oh wow, now it looks like a globe. What the crap. This is awesome. That's a cool thumbnail. Okay, so we're leaving the globe apparently. That's pretty cool. We should go to the light. It's an endless chase to the sun. Whoa. Okay, this is Hebra Mountain, no? I'm lost. This is so trippy, like seriously. I wish I could hold a bomb and kinda make it seem I'm holding Earth. That would be cool. Wow. This is so awesome. I'm chasing the sun! This was so cool. Look, the sun is like... It's gonna despawn soon. Well, where's the moon? Oh, the moon already spawned, okay. The sun should like despawn too. Hey Blood Tiger, thank you so much for your €1 donation. I really appreciate it. Why didn't you attach a message? Come on. Thank you so much. When the sun died. Okay, that's it. It despawned. Now there's the moon. Blood Tiger, thank you so much for joining. Wait, I could have do the selfie thing. Oh, well. Okay, camera is kind of messed up. Link is useless. Okay, so let's wait until it's daylight again. So we can kind of see what's going on. Like, what the heck? It's very boring here during the nighttime, I must say. Ooh, I wish there could have been a blood moon. That would be so awesome. But I'm basically inside Ruta, so... Wait, no, a blood moon can occur while you're inside a divine beast, I think. It can happen. Yeah, the only way I can kill Link at this point. The only way to like get out of this is actually just transporting, like fast traveling somewhere. That's the only option. Hey K Sanchez, happy you tuned in. I really appreciate it. Zelda, rest in peace. Where's that moon? Come on, moon. Come on, show me sunrise. No, I'm not paragliding. I'm actually flying, dropping down. That's why the sound. Oh, now it's like a complete globe. Pretty cool. Getting glitchier. I kinda wanna leave the game overnight like this and see if something happens after like 6 hours of dropping. Just like have Link keep dropping and go to sleep and wake up in like hell or something. Oh, we can almost see the whole globe. Like pretty soon. Oh, it's gonna be sunrise too, so it's awesome. Okay, the sun should be from there. What time is it? It's 1:30 a.m. Well, you can't really overload because you can shoot weapons or anything. Come on, son. Come on, where's the sun? It's 2:10. Dude, you can't even tell I'm moving the camera. Okay, you actually can. Where's the sun? Wait, there's no moon either. What's going on? There's no moon. Oh, here's the moon. I don't see the sun anywhere. Oh, here's the sun. Okay, we can almost see the globe. The colors are really pretty here, I must say. Come on, come on. Show me the sun rays. Ooh, that's nice. Can you ever reach the sun? Like, how far is the sun? Seriously. Okay, I'm blinded by the sun already. So we can't see the thing as the globe. We dropped too much. Oh my god, I can't see anything! Can you see anything? We're basically going towards the light. Whoa. Oh, it's the wind thing. Are you blinded yet? Link is holy. He can touch the light. Yeah, I think I came across Mr. A Game channel in the past. Hey Sky Copy. Don't worry, it's okay. I appreciate you wanting to donate, but it's okay if you can't. No worries. I'm just glad you tuning in. Hey, Miletails Power just subscribed to me. Sonic's friend, oh my god. Tanooks, thanks for the subscribing as well. I know, we're all gonna go blind. Okay, my eyes hurt. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think this marks the end of the live stream, possibly. The question is, can you actually reach somewhere by keep falling? Or that's it? Can we reach space? Maybe eventually you reach a black hole? I wonder. Wait, does Link look more pixelized or something? Or maybe it's the wind? That's kinda weird. That's like super weird. Well, the light keeps changing. It's getting even more bright. Oh my god. I don't even know where I am anymore. It's complete emptiness. Oh my, okay. No more light, please. No more light. Well, heroes of Hyrule, thank you all so much for joining in this crazy live stream of Leaving the Borders of Hyrule. It was a pleasure. I may keep recording the fall. Maybe after 4 hours or something interesting may happen. So if it does, I'll make a video out of it. If it doesn't, maybe I'll make a video about it anyway. But thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I had tons of fun in the chat with you. Thank you so much for Sean Rippy, George, Poke King, Steed Bar, Janwell, Geo, Lindrag, Jake, Zelda, Pony Fox. Thank you so much for showing me this glitch. Who's that? Zelda Boy, Rocco, Federico, Random Boy, Melinda, Keep Ski Copy, Sunny, Otto Marjo, Warrior Dobby, Delta, The Great Papyrus, Scott, who else in the chat? Blue Beak, Legends of P. Legends of P still in the chat. Wait, okay, let me also write in the chat. Thank you so much for watching. I love writing in the chat so I can give you like heart pieces. Thank you so much for watching. Heart piece. And again and again. And then you copy. And then you spam the chat. So, Heroes of Hyrule, stay tuned for more daily Zelda videos. Again, this is Zelda month, so I'll be uploading daily. Maybe I'll be able to upload daily during April as well. We'll see. Still need to finish that prologue third episode for April. Stay tuned for that. So until next time, Heroes of Hyrule, thank you so much for watching. I love you all. And I appreciate you taking your time to hang out with me and glitching out Zelda Breath of the Wild. So until the next video and the live stream, I will see you then. Bye heroes. Goodbye.